Excellencies, distinguished speakers, I believe there were about 24 of them, honorable judges and friends, Assalamu alaikum, peace be unto you. The distinguished speakers, a heartfelt thanks for your erudite talks on this climate change conference held this first Saturday after the World Environment Day, which was established 52 years ago in 1972, with the goal of raising awareness about important environmental concerns, global warming, deforestation, depletion of the ozone layer, and to advocate sustainable living in harmony with nature, protecting biodiversity, and to reset the balance with nature with transformative changes in how we eat, live, work, and move around. 52 years have passed. Let us acknowledge that what we set out to do, we have failed in. It is a staggering failure. And why did we fail is an important question. But first, a few words about the illness and the sickness of the human body and of the earth. I'm sure that like me, when you visit your doctor, he or she invariably tells you, if you're a smoker, stop or at least reduce smoking. If, like me, you're overweight, reduce your weight, consume less, do not eat processed foods, sugars, and meats, walk and exercise. I think virtually every doctor nowadays says that. And generally, the first indication of ill health and sickness is having temperature. Dr. Adil said we all know what climate change is. Now let me put it in terms with which a layperson like myself may grasp it, understand it. When our human body temperature goes up, it is telling us that we are ill, that we are sick. Our normal temperature is 37 degrees centigrade, about 98.6. If it goes up just 1 degree to 98 degrees centigrade or 100.4, the doctors say you have a fever. If it goes up to a total of 2.5 degrees to 39.5 degrees centigrade, which is 103.1, it is categorized as high fever. 4 degrees, taking it up to 41 degrees centigrade, is 105.8 degrees Fahrenheit, which is very high fever. The earth is sick. The earth is ill. The earth is telling us that as much. It is feverish. The cause of the ill health or the sickness of the human body and of the earth is comparable. What do the doctors tell us? Stop or reduce smoking. The earth is smoking too much. Stop burning or at least reduce the burning of fossil fuels. Not only that, but they need to be conserved for future generations. Reduce weight is the next that the doctor tells you invariably, unless you're the one of few lucky ones who does not put on weight. And in earth terms, it would be conserve my resources, that is the earth's resources. As I mentioned, eat less processed foods. And where does processed food is packaged in plastics? We make plastics, but we cannot destroy them. We construct, but we cannot deconstruct plastic. They'll end up everywhere. They'll end up in the oceans. They'll end up in the rivers. The fish eat them, and eventually we'll end up eating them too. The next thing is meat consumption. every doctor worth his salt says, reduce that. In comparison, eat vegetables, they say. Beef takes 20, I'm not a scientist, but I'll give you stuff which I've gathered from the internet. 20 kilograms of feed and 14,500 liters of beef, of water gets you 1 kilogram of beef. Chicken, the numbers are slightly lower, 3.3 kilograms of feed and 4,300 liters of water. Vegetables is the solution. There is a saying of the fourth Caliph of Islam, Hazrat Ali, may Allah be pleased with him, do not make your stomachs the the graveyard of animals. So I'll come to the religious aspect later. And of course, sugars we must desist. It causes diabetes, it causes many other sicknesses. Till 300 years ago, the weekly consumption of sugar was just 1 small teaspoon. Today, an average is about 1 kilogram of sugars per week per person. Sugar is not required in our diet at all. If you eliminate it, you will feel better, you will live longer, and a number of diseases will get eliminated from your body. Sugar was the world's first epidemic. It was the first drug that was introduced. And who introduced this drug? It was the imperial powers of the day, the colonizers of the world, the slavers of the world. These people introduced sugar in everyone's diet. And who did they gather to make the sugar? They captured, it is estimated, 12.5 million people from the continent of Africa, kidnapped them, enslaved them. A quarter of them just died en route before they reached the destination on the sugar plantation. Their lives were so miserable that a healthy person would last about 6 or 7 years in a sugar plantation. This was known even then. William Fox spoke about this, the evil of sugar, not the health aspect of it, but the human aspect, the misery which it had brought, the enslavement, the killing. And I quote him, that when you put a teaspoon of sugar in your tea, it is stained with spots of human blood. The transatlantic slave ships, fruits of labor, inseparable from human suffering. It was also addressed by the famous poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge on an anti-slavery lecture that he gave in 1795. And I quote, "A part of that food among most of you is sweetened with brother's blood." So this was the other aspect of sugar, which leaving aside the health aspect. And sugar became the most traded commodity in the Western civilization. It contributed to the plantations contributed to species destruction, reduction in biodiversity, creation of monocultures. It was the first drug addiction of the world, and it continues. The next thing which the doctors tell you to do to improve your lives, to live healthier, longer lives, is to walk and to exercise. If you, let's say, I was just calculating, very rough calculations. 12 kilometers is about 1 liter of petrol, which is 250 rupees or about $1. So you save on your pocket, you save the environment, and you get healthy for free. You don't have to maintain a car. Shah Saab's thing of electric vehicles, it's even better to use your feet, if not to use pedal power. Shah Saab, if you're prepared to give up your vehicles, we will certainly provide. One vehicle will probably provide enough bicycles for all the judges of the Supreme Court and many more. Earth is a living organism, but we do not treat it like that. That is the sad part of it. We keep learning things that we did not know, and there's a whole host of material that has been provided to you by very distinguished speakers, and I have certainly learned a lot today. Dr. Syed Hussain Nasr was a great writer, and he has identified the current environmental crisis. He says it is, in actual fact, a spiritual crisis. We did not talk, I don't think anyone spoke about the spiritual crisis, which is the cause of the environmental crisis, or both are the cause of each other. And he's written many books on the subject, Man and Nature, the spiritual crisis in modern man, religion and the order of nature, and goes on and on and on. When I was growing up, we did not have the scientific knowledge backing it. No, probably my mother didn't either, but we were always told, close the tap, don't waste water, switch off the light, do not waste food. And as children, we used to wear hand-me-down clothes. Where did all that come from? It's a very fundamental feature of a faith which is virtually neglected completely. Israf, wastage, is a sin in the religion of Islam, as I'm sure it is in other faiths as well. What is the solution? We deplete natural resources, and when we deplete natural resources and nature, we diminish ourselves. We need to recognize and embrace this interdependence, and I'm fully supportive of the concept. Not just the concept, but I think it does exist in our constitution, of rights of trees, of rivers, because our constitution commences with the words of the most merciful, the most beneficent, that we here are not sovereign, we are exercising, we are stewards, we are vicegerents, we are custodians. And just custodians, not just of humanity, but of all creation. We fail to see the reality of the Creator in creation. Creation is a sacred art of the Creator. Existence is miraculous. We see something today made and we say, wow, what technology. Drones, mobile phones. Can anyone create an ant or a bee, let alone more creatures of the earth? It's impossible. And the philosophical dimension, it's not just an Islamic dimension, it's a philosophical dimension, it's a dimension which is there in all sacred texts and in all knowledge which we almost have forgotten. Quoting Fridtjof Schuon, a metaphysicist, and I quote, "The least speck of dust possesses something of the absolute and thus of the divine." We have to look. We should not just see the water for the sake of water to nourish us. We should not just see an animal to feed us. We should not just see fruit for the same purpose. We should truly see the meaning, the truth behind the meaning of all of creation. The Sioux Indians referred to it as Chante Agate, the eye of the heart. In Arabic, in our tradition, we call it the Ain al-Qalb. Two extreme parts of the world never met each other, talking the same language. Where is the connection? Who taught them the same language? Where did the same truth emanate from? They never met each other. To return to health, we must tackle the disease rather than merely palliating the symptoms, which we've been doing. And I would now like to quote from a Christian philosopher, Philip Sherrard, his book, Christianity, Lineaments of a Sacred Tradition. And I quote, "An agnostic and materialistic science of nature is a contradiction in terms, corresponding to the living reality of nature as a corpse corresponds to the living reality of a human body." The world, the West in particular, took upon the Darwinian point of view, on which many have now in the West moved away from it, but still primarily the Western civilization rests on this Darwinian viewpoint. And I will just read something from The Descent of Man, written by him once 53 years ago. Quote, and you will see how evil it is. At some future period, not very distant as measured in centuries, the civilized races of man will most certainly exterminate and replace throughout the world the savage races. Now, who are the savage races? I leave that. William Trent was a British trader. He went to the Americas and he maintained a journal. And he talks about now the savage races. "We gave them 2 blankets and a handkerchief out of the smallpox hospital. I hope it will have the desired effect," and it did, unquote. This despising fellow human beings, despising nature. Dante in the Divine Comedy, despising nature and her goodness is violence against God. And this is the violence that we are perpetrated because of a particular mindset. And now let's quote someone from the savage race, and you be the judge who the savage is and where the greatness lies. And this is, all of you may have heard of Crazy Horse. We used to call them, when we were growing up, Red Indians. Now the correct terminology, I believe, is native people, or it may be something else. Black Elk. He was the medicine or the holy man of the Oglala Lakota tribe. And I quote him, "We should understand that all things are the work of the Great Spirit. We should know that He is within all things. The trees, the grasses, the rivers, the mountains, all the 4-legged animals and the winged peoples. And even more important, we should understand that He is also above all these things and people," unquote. Now please compare it with Surah verse 38, chapter 6 of the Holy Quran, Al-Anam, where the birds are referred to as communities like you. Not anything else, but communities like you. There is great stuff in the Western tradition as well, and which has been pushed back and has receded. Who doesn't know William Blake's "To see a world in the grain of sand and heaven in a wildflower"? Just as Aisha Malik had showed you the beauty of nature when she very eruditely spoke, and that's just a very small depiction. How many species we have already wiped out from the face of the earth? How many species of fish? How many, now we're after the whales. I always used to wonder, what is the purpose of these whales? They're massive creatures, what do they do? Science has recently revealed that they go deep into the deepest depths of the ocean. They shake it up, literally. And if they were not doing that, the oceans would die. So, the creation that has been put there, we may not know the reason for that creation, but every day we discover something new. Why does a bar-tailed godwit travel across the Arctic to the south, thousands of kilometers without stopping? We don't know. It could have laid its eggs much closer. But it's part of creation. It needs protection. We are the stewards of the earth. We are not the stewards of man. And one of the greatest sins in Islam is if we commit fasad fil ard. Fasad, corruption or destruction, literally fil ard, in the earth or off the earth. There are examples and examples, and I can go on. And I'm sure you're tired because my daughter did mention, Baba, if they don't know what they're doing by calling you to speak on the environment, probably you'll have to arrange dinner for them. I try to keep it short. The seven heavens and the earth and all that is therein praise or glorify Him, but you do not understand their praise or glorification. Surah Isra, the night journey, verse 44. And what is the word for praise and glorification in this verse? It is tasbihahum, tasbih. I was in Turkey recently and I discovered this beautiful story that there was this murshid and he was becoming very old and he wanted to have a successor appointed. So all his sort of murids, and he said, I will appoint him the successor who brings me the most beautiful flower. Till the prayer, the Maghrib prayer is called. So they went out looking, someone got a black tulip, the rose, the lily, all kinds of flowers. And there was this one murid who almost didn't make it. And just before the azan was being called, he came and he placed a dead flower on the feet of his master. And all his companions looked around and said, what is this? Is it a joke? He said, all the others were praying, glorifying. Now, this, just taking again something from the Western culture, Michelangelo's theory of art, and in that book, Marsilio Ficino, an Italian priest, is quoted, and I quote, the visage of God penetrates in all things. If we start looking at creation in that manner, probably most of these things will go away. If we save water, if we don't cut down trees, if we care for all creatures, things could begin to change. Because in most of the world, I won't say in all the world, but most of the world, and this I quote Sayyid Hussain Nasr again, the vast majority of the people in the world do not accept any ethics which does not have a religious foundation. I was the Chief Justice in Balochistan and they were doing ablution, wuzu, and running, the water was running, so I said, don't waste water, and he very sort of almost aggressively responded that I'm doing wuzu. So, how dare you do that? And I then quoted him the hadith of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, that do not waste water. And this he addressed to one of his companions. And the answer was, what if I'm using water for ablution? And the response was, and even if you're standing next to a flowing river, there was no flowing river, but the extreme example was given of that. There's another example, I mean, there are endless examples. There were a person asked him, O Prophet of Almighty Allah, what if I have a seedling in my hand and doomsday comes, Qiyamah, what should I do? It's the end of time. Plant it, was the answer. So just see the wisdom in that. Just do the good act today. Plant, plant, plant. You can never plant enough trees. So let us not exclude the greatest knowledge that we have, that humanity has. Every humanity has their own sacred traditions. I've taken you from the Lakota Indians to the Sioux Indians to Christianity to Islam. It is, do not exclude the sacred. Once you exclude the sacred, you diminish yourselves. And not only that, what is the sacred? Sacred is beauty. Have you, except one example, every noise is, natural noise is beautiful. Have you ever thought about it? The birds chirping, the bees humming, water trickling, even thunder has grandeur. It's impressive. And there's only one, and that's used as an example, not to raise your voices in the Holy Quran, and that's the braying of the ass. So that it's probably the only exception. And if you think about it, how many man-made noises are beautiful? The car passing by, the air conditioner humming, the sort of, I can go on and on and on. You'll rarely find something, the natural voice, the beauty of, so there are so many different dimensions to this aspect. Beauty is the manifestation of the infinite. Let us reintroduce the absolute in the world of relatives. This is the world of relatives. It is not the world, the eventual world. We must give these lessons. What are the little lessons that we can give to our children? Walk, eat less. There is plastic bottles, someone had commented upon them. I refuse to drink from them. It's a one-use plastic. It will roam around the rivers, in the oceans, in the earth. For the next 1,000 years, I think that's about the biodegradable time that it will take to deconstruct. Is it necessary? What do? You extract water, which you did not make. You take out a chemical from petroleum, make plastic out of it. You extract the profit, take it away. This is not very different from the colonization of the world that the imperial powers undertook many years ago. This is a modern form of slavery, except there is one difference. Here you want to be slaves. Here you are voluntarily becoming slaves. There was a whip, there was a lash, there were the shackles. Here it is the power of advertisement. It is the power of the media. It is the power that you must have this water bottle. Could you not just take a metal thermos from home and keep refilling it? So this enslavement that is taking place of we don't need all these things, we want all those things. And what is the purpose? Do we ever pause and think about them? I'm just giving you one example of a plastic water bottle. Yes, we are all guilty. I will profess that Shah Sahab has mentioned and indicated we can do much ourselves. But even if we do just little steps, can you just imagine, okay, the shop is not too far, maybe I just walk today. Just imagine the amount of petrol that you will save, the amount of money you will save, and then you multiply it by if everyone in the country did the same. Fossil fuel is not only brought and burned, contributes to the environment, but it also has traveling cost to it, which the sun, which the wind does not have, which is your own, which is free throughout the world. You just have to learn how to best to utilize it. So we can learn from these things. And I think the solution is, I love that Indian quote which says that, do you not realize that after you've cut all the trees, after you've caught all the fish, etc., and cut the trees, that money can't be eaten. So money is paper. Consider it as that, as nothing more. Don't become enslaved by capitalism, by media, by projections. After all, when I grew up, I had never seen a plastic water bottle. So I grew up without I don't know how we survived. Can you imagine a conference or any place where you won't find, previously they started up with this size, okay, fine, reusable. Then it became smaller and smaller and smaller. Now I've seen plastic water bottles which are this size. So I don't know what the purpose of all this is. So science, we heard a lot of science. Science can tell us a lot of wonderful things. We can now look into distant galaxies. And you just look at them and awe. Is it pure coincidence? Is pure chance that all this happened? You can look out. You can look within the cell. You can go deeper into the cell and the meanings therein. Again, per chance, Darwin, or there's a higher power. And why did he do this? Everything is beautiful in creation. There are no flaws. There are no imperfections in creation. In everything that man made is imperfect. It is, you can't even dispose of your rubbish in a way. It just piles up and piles up and piles up. There are certain things you can sort of make compost out of it, but many of the man-made substances, they just stay there forever. And there is only a certain carrying capacity of the world. After that, it is over. So the Holy Quran keeps talking about ayah as the signs, and these are signs for people of understanding. It's not just beautiful scenery for you that they were made, they were signs. And the former law minister mentioned when God created and the angels were actually said something different, and he asked them the names of things. The names of things. Why the names of things are so important? Because if you know the names of things, if you destroy a species with a name, you feel bad. Oh, so 10 people were killed in that place. If you start saying Muhammad Idris, Alia, so-and-so, so-and-so, there is a personal connection. So there is great wisdom in the naming of things, which was one of the first lessons. And lessons are replete. The first lesson, which is, I think, all the Abrahamic faiths share, is the first lesson to mankind came from a bird, how to bury your brother. So these species teach us things, these species tell us things, and science is not developing fast enough because we'll realize, oh, we lost this species. How many species are wiped out? IUCN has a red list, many more on the list of they'll be just lost in a few years because of the way they were massacred, the way they were hunted. They were not used. It is permissible, certain uses. So the modern skepticism has crept in. And are they happy? The suicide rates are going up, family structures are breaking down. There is general lack of spirituality, which is the craving of the human heart, because it is not different from nature. When take a walk anywhere in a park and come back and see how you feel. If you've had a very bad day, do it in the morning or in the evening, because at the moment the weather is very hot, and you will feel very refreshed. And then try it as a test. Go see a movie and come home. Are you refreshed? You may be entertained. I'm talking about refreshed. So you can try it just as a test and see how you feel in all of this. So we must address the imbalances that have crept in. We must We are now becoming, all the wisdom we take from the West, we must share from our tradition with them. We are forgetting them, we are not using them, but let there be forums where we can take something to you. The Lokata Indians can take, the Sioux Indians can show something to you. The Christian tradition, the Bible in Matthew 6:29, I think it says, Solomon, Hazrat Suleiman alayhi salam, Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of you. And who is the Almighty referring to? A lily. The beauty of the lily he's comparing with his prophet. So you can imagine the value that the Creator, the Absolute, places in a lily, in every part of his creation. If your child, if somebody, the pain, if somebody killed a child, the pain would be unbearable. Can you tolerate someone slapping your child? Just imagine. Now put yourself in, I don't know how to say it. Imagine when the Creator created something and you wipe out that species. I just leave that thought there because the answer saddens me to the core and scares me to the core as well, that I'm become so accountable. How can I say anything to that? And I am the designation from us, for all of us, as stewards of the earth, not of stewards of mankind. We love to tell each other, do this, do that, don't do that, but we are actually, the word used is Khalifa fil Ard, stewards of the earth, of every creature, of every stone, of every river. The river also has rights. Shahzad mentioned rights of rivers. It needs to meander. If you're going to build a hotel, yes, there was loss there, but I don't think that should have been built within that, next to the river, because those are the rights of the river, that it needs to meander and go down to the ocean. We are building cities. Karachi was discussed. The city could have gone inwards into Sindh. No, it went into the ocean. You cut the natural protection, the mangrove swamps, which is a perfect barrier against waves, against floods, and you then say, why is this happening? It's happening because you're not thinking. Every part, it is repeatedly mentioned in sacred texts that you must think what is happening. We have reduced scripture to sort of like a few commandments and that's about it. But there's much more. It's not if you talk about the actual acts of prayers and Hajj and fasting. There's very few of those verses. The rest is all about nature, about stories, and all these stories and nature-centric city has definitely meaning. Like I said, they are not just signs, just not pretty scenery. There are signs which we must see and understand. But unfortunately what is happening is that there is a skepticism that is set in. It is almost an embarrassment to talk about faith. And those who talk about faith is the kind of faith you don't want to hear anything about. So this is something we have to address ourselves as a society, because whenever they talk about extremism or terrorism, they're talking about their faith. They're not talking about God's faith. It is something else altogether. So there is, I will now conclude in just saying that the more we know, and we know so much more now. We know the science of climate change. We know how it's happening. We didn't know that before. But the more we are degrading, so we must be the most stupidest people on the world, knowing that this is going to happen, we're still doing that. So one thing is you don't know something about something and you do it. One thing, you now have the science, that it's indisputable, the science is absolutely clear. You do this, these are the results. You're going to burn fossil fuels, this is going to happen. You're going to eliminate yourself and all of creation as well with you. And it is the disconnect. The more we know, the more we degrade, and the more the human heart degenerates. Let us turn the corner. Let's bring back, let's open the doors of spirituality about the infinite, about the absolute, into our daily lives, and look at creation with a pair of fresh eyes. And I will conclude by saying this is my prayer of, if I can conclude on a prayer for today, this will be my prayer, because if you take this message forward, it will resonate in people's hearts and they will quickly stop doing it. Like the man I told about the wasting of the water, he immediately closed the tap. No further discussion came to an end. So in conclusion, I would like to first of all thank the COP presidency that has now gone to a neighboring country, and we are very proud of it, because we learn from the wisdom that is there in Azerbaijan, and their ambassador, His Excellency Mr. Khazar Faradov, has already shared the green goals that they have set for themselves, the net zero emission cities that they are creating, and that the 29th COP presidency is with their Dr. Mukhtar Babai, and all eyes are now on you, and the standard bearer is you, and the fact that you're in the neighborhood gives me greater comfort and great expectations and hopes. And I would also like to thank all the very distinguished speakers, the organizers of this conference, particularly Rifat Inam Butt, who's the Secretary of the Law and Justice Commission of Pakistan. I did not have anything to do with it. I must confess, this was Justice Mansoor Ali Shah and Justice Aisha Malik. Can we have can you applause for them? And can we have another applause for the very distinguished speakers who have reminded us what we are doing, what we should stop doing, and what we should do. Thank you.